hug that dog. I want to hug that dog. I want to hug that. I want to hug that. I want to hug that dog. Any luck?
My dog that's in the back.
So I'm
Yes.
autistic, and I have committed to myself to just not try to mask it anymore. So I'm very weird.
Okay, that's great. Hello, my darlings. Welcome to another episode of Ink Medicine. This is episode 14. I'm here with a lovely internet connection named Erin. Erin, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erin Rogers. I'm from Toronto, Canada. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a storytelling coach and public speaker. I work with different people to like find and tell their stories, whether it's to sell something or it's to start lobbying or to share on a stage or even to just share with a family member. That's what I do, and I've done it in a bunch of different ways. I help with people with writing. I have some collections that I've been part of a group that puts out. We're called the Pathfinders Collective. We've put out 2 storytelling anthologies. Well, the new one is coming out on April 4th, but it'll be 2 anthologies by the end of this year, which is very exciting. And I help people writing and performing. So I do coaching for both of those things, and I'm very excited to be here.
Cool. Hey, funny enough, am taking a storytelling class currently. Like I'm in a
Awesome.
format
Who are you
of,
taking it from?
her name is Dixie De La Tour. Have you heard of
Oh my
her?
gosh, I don't know. I don't know that person, but I'm so excited to Google them after this.
She has this project called Body, and she spells it
Mhm.
Bawdy. So it's like a sex and
I love
kink
it.
stories
Yeah. Oh,
podcast, and it's
that's so
cool.
much fun. And by the
Yeah.
way, if she's listening, prepare for an email from me because you said rad.
Yeah, I hope she's listening.
Mhm.
So cool. So you also had the way that we connected was that I posted on Reddit and I said, I'm happy to have guests from all over the place to talk about their stories and their tattoos. And you reached out and said, I'd be happy to do that. And so here
Mhm.
we are connected. What what are you doing prowling through Reddit looking for people to talk to? Tell me more.
Well, honestly, some of my most amazing friendships have come from the internet. I
Hmm.
currently have a writing partner who is a Brazilian scientist who lives in Chicago that I met because he posted funny stuff on Twitter. And then I Googled him, and all I could find were science papers written in Portuguese. So I was
Hmm.
like, okay, well, I don't know where you are. So I sent him a direct message, sorry, saying, can I find some of your other writing? All I can find is a scientist. And he was like, I am that scientist. And we started talking. He was on one of my storytelling shows. And then we started writing together. I've been on the internet a long time, but like some of the most amazing connections I've made are through the internet. And I think it's such a wonderful way to meet people and find out things about the world. It's also a bit of a cesspool, but a cesspool is where, like, I think frogs live in a cesspool and frogs are awesome. So hooray,
Bacteria live in the cesspool, and
exactly. And they're
we're
really
all come
neat.
from that. Yes,
Exactly.
it's
I
what.
watched the movie Osmosis Jones. They're pretty neat.
How old are you?
I am 42.
You're 42. You're a little bit older than me. I'm just thinking
Mm-hmm.
about the kind of age when the internet came about. Was the I came to the States in 96 and I basically got
Mm-hmm.
on America Online immediately. And
Mm-hmm.
that was like 12, 13 when I started, hanging out on the
Was that when
internet.
they used to send the CDs in the mail?
Yes.
Yes. They did that in Canada too. No, you are in Canada, right?
No, I'm in California. I'm in the States.
Okay, so it is.
Uh-huh.
Yes. I wasn't sure about the time zone, but yes, they did that in Canada too. And we're always like technologically behind the States. Or not, maybe not technologically, but like our markets are different. And that was the
Hmm.
one thing that happened everywhere was that weird CD that would just show up at your house.
Like for free. It would just
Yeah.
show up in your mail. Yeah. So
Hmm.
that was your time too when internet just got started and you got on there. You were about 14, 15 that time.
Honestly, it wasn't until college. I was scared of everything as a child. And at that time, this is very embarrassing to admit, but I have vowed to not mask my autism anymore. So this is how I think of the world. But anyways, I was scared of everything as a kid because I watched a lot of TV and there was a lot of shows about like predators from the internet. So I was terrified of the internet
Uh-huh.
until I went to college.
Uh-huh.
And then I got super into it. But yeah, I was basically not on the internet till I was 18.
Okay. Yeah, you
Yeah.
missed. I sort of wasn't. I didn't. I kept making connections and meeting people like older men. I met all
Mhm.
kinds of probably predators. Looking
Yeah.
at it because I was like 14, 15, and these guys were like in their 40s, 50s.
Yeah. That is awful. I am so sorry that happened. It's also
I was
very
not
weird to
harmed.
realize.
I was not
Yeah.
harmed. I'm fine.
Well, that's
It's
great.
fine.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm
Yeah.
glad. Sometimes people aren't as horrible as they could be.
Yeah.
Because some people are very horrible and some people are just like, they're not making great decisions, but they're not harming anyone.
Hmm.
But I do, for years when I was a kid, I was told I watched too much TV and it was damaging me. And so what you're just proving is that they were wrong because TV kept me away from predators because I was like
Hmm.
scared of everything. But it also kept like being scared of everything also keeps you away from everything good. So it took me a while to kind of be a person that would like go into the world, which to like bring back to storytelling and tattoos, I feel like those two things have really changed the way I go about the world, like my bravery level. So when I got my first tattoo, I was feeling really depressed. And, I would like lie in bed and all that kind of stuff. And I would think about what would make me feel better. And I was like, if there was only a thing that I could bring around all the time that would make me feel better, like when you're like a little kid and you have like a security blanket.
Hmm.
And so I got a phoenix tattooed on myself to basically be like, to remember that forever. And so it changed the way I move around the world. And then when I started doing storytelling, I started meeting all these people and like being more to my true self, which led me to be able to be a person who is like autistic and weird and says the wrong thing sometimes and like embarrasses myself, but also I am myself now. And I never thought I'd get there
When
ever.
when did you realize that you were autistic?
A couple years ago,
How did you
it's
realize that?
I think someone told me.
Like someone was like, I think you're autistic? Like what?
Yeah. In like a
Okay.
very sweet and gentle way. It was kind of
Mhm.
like I'm in a lot of queer communities. So instead of it being like, you're autistic, it was someone kind of like, hey, buddy, like, do you think you might be autistic? I made you some tea. Like it was just the
Mm.
nicest outing of all time. And then I started reading about it and started thinking about like patterns in my life and some of the ways relatives are with like social cues and that kind of stuff. And it
Mhm.
was like suddenly everything was in color. I was like, oh, that's what it is. I thought I was doing it on purpose. That's just the way my brain is.
Tell me like a thing or two that was like a key moment, like a key thing that you're like, this is a thing I do, or this is the
Yeah.
way that I think that's different from other people.
So this is really funny to say because literally my job is to help people find that moment of change. Like it's one of the top things I say to people. And I don't know if I have exactly one. I feel like weirdly in like a disorder that's a spectrum, I feel like I discovered more parts of it bit by bit. Like it was almost a spectrum of discovery where I was like, oh, wait a second. And like also being in spaces where people are more direct.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's like queer spaces tend to be direct in a different way. Like, people will be very gentle with each other, but they will take you aside and be like, hey, did you think that like maybe this? There's also the thing that nobody talks about where someone will take you aside and be like, have you noticed that this pattern in your life is like maybe not great?
Hmm.
Which is so beautiful to me and like has taught me so many things about myself that no one ever told me. And then someone was like generous enough, excuse me, I'm going to cry, generous enough this is all really new to me. It's hilarious that I'm doing this because I tell people to not tell stories in if it's a wound, not a scar. But to me, it's not a wound. it's this discovery. And like, that's what I get emotional about, that it's just like, I'm not, as soon as I stopped, well, I didn't stop. As soon as I had the beginning of not masking myself, the first time that I was going to stop what I was saying and I just said it, was probably with a friend of mine, Brandy, who's a wonderful person. And she laughed and I knew it was okay. Like, that might be the moment that I was like, oh, this is going to be okay. Being myself is going to be okay. And it's a journey. Excuse me. I was really not expecting to be emotional about this. You're a very lovely listener. You have just such a warmth to you. This must be happen to you in the chair all the time. Am I right?
Well, I'm mostly talking to people I already know, you know, so
Yes.
there's
But
like
I
already
mean,
an
when you tattoo
understanding.
people, do they instantly tell you things they don't tell other people?
Yeah, it happens for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have that energy of like, it's the way you listen. It's like you listen with your whole body. Oh, my goodness. That's also the thing. I think I don't have that many tattoos, but every experience has been so beautiful because in my experience, the artists I've gone to are very good listeners, excuse me, and very good with someone who is weird. So honestly, there's been like all three experiences I've had getting a tattoo were just like so beautiful.
I mean, honestly, you know, I think we have to be weird in a lot of ways. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure that goes the same for the dude artists that I've known,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, my community has been the queer and the women's tattoo community, and we're all
Yeah.
weird. But
Yeah. It's so nice.
it's
And
it's not a conventional path.
yeah, but I also feel like there's a thing, and it's, my experience with your community is limited. I've had 3 tattoos. They're pretty small. And I'm a very anxious person. So when people are like, do you want to go to a party? I'm like, can I sit in a corner and like wait for half an hour until I can make eye contact with people? Because if not, I'm probably going to be pretty on because I'm so anxious. Like, once I
Mhm.
get there and start talking to people, I'm fine. But like going somewhere to go to a social experience, ugh. I don't know why there's not more horror movies about having to leave your house and go to a party. Like that 20 minutes, like real time.
Mhm.
Honestly, ugh, terrifying. That was a long way to say every time I've gone to a tattoo place, I get the experience of like people are just like, oh, come in. Like, they're not necessarily cracking jokes or whatever, but they like gesture to a place for you to sit instead of like not looking up. Like, even if they're on the phone, they'll tell you what to do. They give
Mhm.
you a social cue. And for someone with autism, at least in my opinion, like, that's the kindest thing you can do. Tell me what the rules are because I want to do it right. And I
Mhm.
feel like so many shops, I'm sure there's ones that are like not that, but I don't really go into those spaces because they make me feel uncomfortable. Like, if I get a bad vibe, I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah, it's just like quiet, listening to people telling me what to do in a way that feels comfortable, just like, ooh, such a weight off. It's amazing.
So tell me about your first time this Phoenix tattoo that you got when you were
Mm-hmm.
depressed.
Yeah.
How did you find the person? How did you decide
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to be Phoenix? And what was your experience like? And then afterwards.
It's so funny to talk on like in a what I consider a queer space, because if I don't tell the story usually, because it's a thing where people like don't want to ask. If I especially if I start like, I got a tattoo at a bad time, people are like, oh, look at the time, gotta go. Anyways, with in my experience with queer people, like, we'll sit down, we'll hold your hand and be like, tell me exactly all of the worst things that happened, like, and I'll tell you the same thing, and then we'll hug. It'll be so nice. Anyways, but I had a nervous breakdown in my first year of university, and I didn't know that that was like a thing that ran in the family. So I was just like, oh, my life is over. Like, this is what my life is forever. It's just gray all the time. And like, I watched a lot of art movies as a kid. So I just pictured it was going to be like German realism, like forever. Really depressing. And like, I don't know, David Lynch movie, but not one of the like sexy ones with Laura Dern, just the ones that are like a bummer. Anyways, so I felt so awful. And I went to a therapy group, which was like so earnest. I went to Guelph University, which is like such a sweet, at least at the time, such a sweet university, very gay. I was constantly ducking away from like frisbees, and like people were playing hacky sack like all year round. It was so cute and so sweet. Ani DeFranco, it's one of the only places, one of the only schools in Canada like she stops at the University of Guelph. I went to this very sweet, earnest group that was like a, deal with your depression group. And then I would go and like try not to cry. And we talked about finding something like a character, and thankfully it was not presented as a spirit animal, because yikes. It was just presented as like, find a character, find an animal. It can be a fictional character, it can be a real character, just find something that you connect with to like help you. They didn't even use the word recovery that I remember. It's just like help you in your next steps. And I'm a big weird nerd, and I like, when I was a kid, I was like, the Middle Ages and like, all that kind of stuff. So my first thought was a phoenix. And I am scared of needles, scared of pain, and scared of being very physically close to someone. And I dropped out of university. Like, I didn't drop out, I transferred. But I went back home to live with my parents, which at the time felt like the loseriest thing that I could do. And like, it's no big deal. People move in with their parents all the time. It's fine. Everything was fine. But I was so ashamed. And I went to University of Toronto. And I remember just being like, I'm getting a tattoo. Like, I just decided, it was like, what is a thing that I can do to remind myself that I'm going to be okay? That even though things seem gray, we'll be okay. And that was it. And I got the tattoo done, and the tattoo artist was so nice. And this is a part of the story that like, anybody's welcome to get any tattoo they want, and there's no bad tattoo. And I do not want to slut shame anyone. Anything you want to call yourself is fantastic. Great. But the woman at the booth next to me was getting a tattoo that I believe read slut in like giant letters, like beautiful embroidered looking letters. But she was like crying the whole time. Like, I don't know if she got halfway through the slut and was like, this is a bad idea, but like, I've committed this far. But anyways, she was crying, and I remember it hurt. And all I could think was like, if I'm crying, I'm just going to cry because I'm proud of myself. Because like, I didn't think I could do any of those things. And I'd done all of them all at once. And also I had a tattoo that like, I knew I wasn't going to, this is me. I wasn't going to be embarrassed of. Like, I didn't have giant slush across my back. I hope that woman just was in pain and she was like, yeah, I'm a slut. This is great. And just felt like empowered forever.
I really hope so. Yeah. I really hope so. I hope it wasn't under duress.
That's the raddest tattoo in the world.
Yeah.
Like, bless you. Wear your giant fancy slut tattoo. That is amazing.
I agree.
So if she's out there and you're the woman with the amazing slut tattoo, congratulations. And like, let me know who you are. You're rad. But I was so, it was wonderful. And it didn't like cure my depression. If it did, could you imagine? That would just be like, that's the cure to depression entirely.
I mean,
just getting a tattoo.
I feel like it happens, people get shaken out of their like sort of state of being. They get some endorphins. They are like, there are other things in the world. There's other emotions. So I think, it can.
I think it definitely
effect.
shakes people up, no matter what. Because something is permanently changed. And it is, like I said, as a kid, I was like, Middle Ages. But I remember reading about, and I think it was the Middle Ages, these giant tapestries that people would have on their walls, partly to keep their walls warm because everything was freezing, because the past sucked. Anyways, but they had these beautiful tapestries, and you see people with full body tattoos. And I always think that's like you're walking around as one of those tapestries, which is so cool. Like, you get to choose exactly how you represent to the world. Yeah. That's the only way you can.
But it's funny, right? How for a lot of the population, people don't see what the tattoos are. They just see tattooed person, scary, run, or whatever, right? And then other people are like, let me see what you've got. Oh, you have this and that. Like, I can tell a lot about you based on what you have. It's two different sorts of you
Yeah.
know,
I have such a fondness for embarrassing old tattoos. Not like something where you're ashamed of it, but you're just like, why did I think this unicorn tattoo where like the unicorn is giving me the finger and like on a skateboard would be a good idea? Like I love those tattoos. They're truly
mhm.
some of my favorite because it is, oh, that's you. You have, people have like body swap movies where they want to like see what they were really like at 15. You were a person that thought that was a good idea. Like
Mhm.
that's so sweet.
I'm still stuck on the Phoenix. I want to see what it looks like. I mean, I'm not gonna make you like take your clothes off on Zoom, but
Mhm.
if you could send me a picture later, that'd be
Yes,
great.
I will for sure. And I feel like I don't know if you have a website for this, but it's like it's gotten old for sure because it's been on my body for a while. But I love it. I just love it so much. And I also love how it's faded. Like I love that it is not my freshest tattoo, so it's like been a part of my body. Like there's proof that it's been
Yeah.
part of my body for a while.
Yeah. I mean, when I tattoo people who are newer to tattooing and
Mhm.
they'll ask, at what point am I gonna want to touch up? And I say, maybe you want to touch up, maybe you don't. Maybe that's just part
Mhm.
of your life, and the way it ages is part of how your body is aging, and it's not going to feel
Yeah.
like a thing you want to renew. But when
Yeah.
people first get tattooed, they don't think of it that way. But you're totally right.
Yeah.
It cuts with you. It's a part of you.
Yeah. I kind of
Um,
want to be this like old lady with faded tattoos. Like
mhm.
I well, I think I was like 17 and I was on the this is embarrassing. You call it subway in America as well, right?
Well, we have the train, the metro, the
Oh, okay. Yeah.
subway,
Underground.
underground, yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on the subway and I was like
Mhm.
17 years old. And then I saw there was like this crowd of people, like just like, like bros with backpacks, and like everyone was super frustrated and whatever. And then it just like this sea of people just like parted like it was the Red Sea. And this woman came through, and she was like probably a 70-year-old woman with blue hair, like old lady 80s blue hair, and a punk jacket covered in
Yeah.
spikes and patches. And the crowd just dispersed. Like I was just like,
Yes.
oh my God. It was like seeing, in like superhero movies where they see Thor and everyone's like, oh, like that's what it was like. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so I want to be that lady. Like
I
that's
was
my
thinking seeing Jesus walk on water.
pretty much.
Yeah. Like
Pretty
the
much.
first
It
thing you
was
be like,
so
I want to,
rad.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I also want to be that person. So let's
Yeah.
aspire for that.
Yeah.
I'll start
It
making my
is.
jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. I already have some patches.
Yeah, but
Um,
the spikes, they take a while to put in. So,
that's true. That's true. But it was I I'm sure we've all gotten a lot of crappy messages of like getting older, and
mhm.
seeing that woman, like I was just like, I get those messages all the time, and I feel shitty about them a lot of the times, especially as I get older. And like I'm always happy at since I'm out of my mid 20s, I'm always happy with what age I'm at. Like I've never been like, oh, when I'm older, I've never looked back and gone, I wish I was that age again. Because it's
Mhm.
like, ooh, everything, even when it's good in the rear view mirror, I that's how I prefer it because it keeps getting incrementally better.
Good.
But when I was about to turn 30, I got so many messages from people where it was like, your life is over, no one's gonna look at you again, like the best is over, you better have kids or you're gonna be alone forever. And I was super scared, which is hilarious because like all I've ever really wanted in life is to people to like leave me alone and not look at me. So I should have been like super excited, but I was
Mhm.
super scared. And then I woke up on my 30th birthday and I was like, oh, this is great. This is fine. Awesome. But yeah, I feel like part of it was seeing that lady, that punk lady. I was like, oh, there's another option.
Also, like if you look around, if you talk to people, people meet each other, people meet soulmates, become
Mhm.
polyamorous and become parts of whole communities at any age, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a community I'm a part of that is mostly folks in their 50s, 60s, 70s,
Hmm.
all these queers, all these freaks, all these tattooed people, they're all doing drugs and playing with sex
Hmm.
toys and hanging
Yeah.
each other up on hooks off trees. And,
Yeah.
and I like that was so cool for me to be part of through my 20s and
Hmm.
30s to be like, I could be 65 and hanging off a
Yeah,
tree on hooks and,
exactly.
you know, doing ecstasy. Like
Exactly.
if I want to, I can be whoever I
Yeah,
want at any age.
100%. I
You
think I
don't
go
have
to,
to be open to anything. I think, that's what
yeah,
I'm saying is like, no matter what it is that you want to be doing
exactly.
at 60 and 70, like if you're alive and well enough to do it, you're going to have
Hmm.
other people who are going to be there with you.
Yeah.
Whether
And that
that's,
is a really good point.
yeah.
That part too is like you can do anything, but you don't have to do this, that, or the other thing. Like it
But that
is,
there's always going to be other people if you want them. You
mhm.
know,
Yeah.
if you want to be alone, you can, and if you don't,
Yeah.
you don't have to.
Yeah. It's such a simple idea, but it's an idea I regularly have to remind myself of, that like I get to actively choose what my life's going to be like. I don't get to choose what happens to me. Like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and that's the end of my
Hmm.
life. Or I could live to be 95 years old. Who knows?
Hmm.
And like any of those kind of things, but I get to actively decide what that I want to do this or I want to do that or I don't want to do this or that.
What was the second tattoo after the phoenix?
The second tattoo is a joke tattoo that have you ever seen the movie Memento?
Yes.
So I went through a time where I kept referencing it and I kept forgetting the name of the movie regularly. I'd be like, that movie, and then I'd have to describe all the things. And people were also like, are you joking? Like, is this a joke? You don't remember the name. But it wasn't. I just couldn't remember the name. So I got it
That's
tattooed on
pretty
my
funny.
body.
That's pretty
Yes.
funny. Yeah.
And it's upside down. So I can like pull up my pant leg and
Yeah.
check. So yes, that was
I
the
was gonna
second
say
one.
for folks listening who doesn't know what this movie is, the movie is
Mhm.
about a man whose whose wife whose wife disappears or dies.
Yes, his wife has died. He's
She's
trying to
died.
solve the
And
mystery.
he's in an accident, right? Where his
Yes.
short-term memory is erased.
Hmm.
And so he gets tattoos of clues so he could solve the
Hmm.
mystery of her death.
Yeah.
And so he's got all these tattoos in there. That's a huge part of the plot, and
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
recognizable quality of the movie is that people be like, oh yeah, that movie,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
Exactly. And so he has a bunch of the clues written backwards or upside down so he can read it on his own body, like on a mirror or on his leg. And so I got it done and I went into a tattoo shop and I was just like, I'm just going to do it. And I went in and it was, I didn't ask anyone's pronouns, so I'm not sure, but it was like what seemed like two cis men. And my brain was like, whoop, because I was like, I'm going to be made fun of. Like that was my instant instinct. I'm like, I am putting myself in a space to be made fun of. And so I like signed up for it. And then like I was like, oh, I'm gonna find out information. And then I just was like, fuck it. I've been talking about this tattoo. I'm gonna get it. So I put my name down. And then they were like, oh, we have space in an hour. So I walked around for an hour and I read an article about Jane Fonda in like Bust magazine, and I was like, Jane Fonda wouldn't let anything get in her way. And so I went back to get the tattoo. And the guy who did the tattoo was so sweet.
Nice.
Just like someone's nice kid brother. I don't know, that much, but just lovely and quiet and just let me talk and be silly because I was clearly anxious. And just like we talked about art, and it was so nice.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so that was the second tattoo, and I got that during COVID times, and that was kind of like that's my autism tattoo. That's my like, what if I just let myself be myself tattoo.
Mm.
And
Like
the
it
third,
reminds you of your decision to just let yourself be yourself and not mask.
exactly, and it was when I got it because my other tattoo's on my back, so I never see it.
I thought it was
Like,
on your hip.
no, it's on my back.
Okay.
I don't point clearly.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
on my back. Yeah, I got that the movie is called Memento tattoo, and I was like, I'm gonna get sick of it, and then I'm gonna feel bad about it, and I love it every time I see it. Like I forget it's there, and then I look at it and I laugh. Like that is the fact that I have committed to a joke forever. I
Hmm.
love.
Hmm.
Like that's my favorite tattoo that I'll ever get. I love all my other tattoos. I feel like I'm talking about my kids. I love all my tattoos equally, but that's not true. I have a favorite tattoo. It's the Memento one.
What was the third tattoo that you got?
The third tattoo is did you ever watch the show Tuca and Birdie?
No.
So they're two birds who live in I think it's supposed to be New York City. Anyway, some major city, and they're roommates. And Birdie moves in with her boyfriend. And basically the show is, to me, is these two friends that have been so close and lived a certain way for years are growing up. And like, how does that, what's their life like?
But
One of
they're
them has gotten,
birds.
yeah, they're two birds.
But
Yeah.
they're animated.
Yeah. One of them is a toucan and one of them is like a little songbird, very
Mhm.
anxious. And it's fantastic. And yeah, one of them has just gotten sober. The toucan has just gotten sober. So very much in that headspace of like figuring out the world without something that had been helpful originally.
Mhm.
And now that had stopped being helpful. So it's these two birds and also Birdie's partner, Speckle, who is super sweet and feels like really nice cis guys I know, where they're just like, so they're like the guy who gave me a tattoo, just like really genuine. So one episode, there's this snake that starts, like these snakes start coming and they like swallow people. And one of them gets swallowed by a snake. And she gets this wild amount of confidence because no one's really looking at her. They're looking at the snake. So all of her anxiety is gone. And she's just killing it at work and all these things. And I was like, what if I was able to have that snake kind of confidence? So I did a screenshot and I took it to my tattoo artist. And we had a wonderful conversation. They were really funny and really smart. And when I got it done, they asked me, now that you have the snake, because I told them the story of it, now that you have this snake, what are you going to do differently in your life? Like how are you basically going to take this snake energy into your life? I was like, oh man, I didn't even quite realize that was the other thing, is that it wasn't just like, here's one that's a silly joke. It was also like, here's one that's kind of giving me that same kind of the phoenix power, but like in the like on another part of my body.
Is it little?
It's
It's like,
pretty small.
but
Yeah.
I'm assuming like a simple outline, like a little
Exactly.
cartoon. Okay.
Exactly. It's just like a black and white outline. It's a snake. It's a cartoon snake wearing a hat. It's the
Okay,
greatest.
cool.
You know what? I say that. I feel like maybe it is. I have a weird parental relationship with my tattoos. Because when I was talking about the first one, I was like, that's my favorite. And then I said, I feel that way about everyone as I'm describing them. Like, no, that's the best tattoo. Like, I love them all. They're
I'm
great.
so glad you love all those tattoos. So, how
Mm-hmm.
do you feel about like you before starting this tattoo journey? You said you were afraid of
Mm-hmm.
needles, being close to people,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have anxiety. I'm assuming about other aspects of it. So,
Yeah.
how does it feel when you're actually getting tattooed?
Yeah. Um, well, I'm still scared of needles and people. But I do notice a difference, and I've never thought of this before. And also the way that my first tattoo artist, who also I wish I still had the contact for, lovely, was like, tell me if it's too much, let me know, communicate with me. There's no wrong answer. And that's like the first time anyone said that to me, probably in my whole life.
Hmm.
So I feel like, weirdly enough, tattoos have taught me more about consent than a lot of other things have.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I've literally never thought of it that way, but yeah, that was because that was not like, I was born in 1980. That was not a conversation at all. That, there was like the worst thing that can happen, but there weren't like gradients of
Hmm.
things like that. Just making someone feel uncomfortable
Hmm.
being a thing that wasn't like their problem
Yeah.
feels like it's a pretty recent phenomenon.
I mean, I'm so glad you had those experiences from early on
Mhm.
because I never had those experiences, good
I'm
experiences
so
getting
sorry.
tattooed.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
so sorry to hear that.
it was the standard. I mean, the people I got tattooed by were just random people that I would walk in somewhere and,
Yeah,
were just dudes or
yeah.
whatever. I mean, I had my friends who would tattoo me, people I worked with, but so I'm
Mhm.
so glad that your experiences were really good.
Yeah, it was me too for many reasons, but like also just because I'd be really sad if I lost tattooing because I've lost some things. I think we've all lost some things because of bad experiences. And you can
Yeah,
get it back.
yeah.
Like I've seen it happen. It's happened for me. But I don't think I want to make it like, I don't think there's a queer person, or I don't think there's a woman, or I mean, this is not my personal experience, but like, I don't think there's a person of color, or I don't, that hasn't had something taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
That might be true for everyone. That
Like
something,
part of being human.
yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know that it has to be.
I mean, I don't know how people would avoid it.
Well, I think like I'm a bit of a Pollyanna. Like I can be I've watched too many Jimmy Stewart movies. So like sometimes I feel like I'm about to say like, ah, shucks. I feel like for me, there's things where you have a shitty experience, but it doesn't feel like it was something was taken from you. Like I've had stuff where people said something that was awful, but it didn't mean I couldn't do the thing. Like I did comedy for years. I'm still sort of doing comedy. And I've people have said some really fucked up things to me, like that made me feel awful, but it was never taken from me. It was never like I can't do comedy because it breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to take times away, but it's always been part of me, and I've always been like so happy that that's always a thing. And I know there's people that I know that they stopped painting and they just never did it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, and maybe they get it back, or maybe it was time for them to be like they stopped because they didn't really want to keep going, and then someone said something shitty and they were like, well, I don't love it enough to keep going. But I think there's people that love something and it's taken from
I mean, I think you're right, but I think it
them.
happens on, not just with the things that we do,
Mhm.
but the parts of ourselves, you
Yeah,
know, uh, where you feel forever self-conscious because someone said you're ugly, or,
yeah,
something along those lines, right?
yeah,
Especially as like female people who were
mhm.
raised female and socialized as
Yeah,
female. A lot of
yeah,
things like that, right? Like where someone undercuts like a way that your body is, or the way that you look, or the way
mhm.
that you sound, and then you're like forever, unless you work on it really hard, self-conscious
Yeah.
about it. But yeah, for sure, things too that
Yeah.
we love, and
I think
people, and
like my Pollyanna version of it, and I will repeat, this is like very like everything will be better in the future. But imagine if like we all just decided, what if we stopped humiliating people to make ourselves feel better?
mhm.
Like what if we all just decided that? And so kids don't learn it, because it is like you're a kid, you notice everything. And I don't know that, like, maybe that's part of the human brain. But I remember the first time that I felt actively humiliated.
You
That was
think
an
the person
adult
did
did
it on
that.
purpose?
Mhm. An adult did it on purpose.
Hmm.
And as an adult, I was like, she was probably going through something. Like people do cruel things without thinking about it.
Hmm.
And to her, it is nothing.
Right.
Nothing happened at all. Like she told a joke, like I was like 5, I was the youngest kid in my class, and I got like pencil on my nose, and she like pointed it out and the whole classroom laughed, and I was already smaller than everyone and so weird. And it
Hmm.
was like when I was a kid, that was like the worst. Like I carried that with me for years, which is like, it seems silly, but my brain was the brain of a 5-year-old. I had only been alive for 5 years. That's the worst thing that had ever happened to me. And it changed the way because kids were like, basically went, oh, we can bully you. The teacher just gave us permission to bully you. Yeah. And I will say, what I got in that moment is, you're going to be funny. Like in a
Hmm.
weird way, she gifted me that I was going to be funny forever. Cause like that was when I learned that like if I made everyone laugh instead of how they went from like ha ha to like ha ha. So in a weird way, like she changed the course of my life. Nice try, Mrs. Armour. Turns out you made me very funny.
Her last name was Armor. That's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah. Oh
amazing.
my God. That's very
Yeah.
true.
That's
Yeah.
funny you're talking about that. Can I share a little story of my own?
Please. This is my favorite thing in the world.
I haven't thought about like that first time somebody humiliated you, and I'm sure there were a bunch of things like that, but the specific thing I remember was like a summer camp with parents. It was, all
Mm.
of us, and it was my classmates. Like we would all hang out together, my regular school classmates. We would all vacation together. I don't know exactly how this worked out, but we did.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this like sleepaway resort camp thing. And there was this like game on the stage where they had all the kids behind a curtain, behind a sheet, and then they put the sheet up and they had all the kids stick out their hands. And the
Mm-hmm.
parents had to come and figure out which hand was whose and they get their kid out of there. And so my grandma, who was basically like my parental figure, she raised
Mm-hmm.
me. She came over there and she, got my hand correctly. And then she was asked, "How did you know?" And she, in front of everybody, said, "Oh, her hand was the fattest, so I knew it was her." And I started just like bawling and ran away crying because to me it was so humiliating because
Mm-hmm.
especially in Russia, like body and size, it was so
Mm-hmm.
more so than here in the West. Like it was just so
Mm-hmm.
like if you're fat, you will never be loved. You will like
Yeah.
you have to try. You have to at least try to be skinny. And it was
Mm-hmm.
body stuff and like
Yeah.
body size and fatness was like a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like
Oh,
the worst thing
wow.
you could be, really, like the way that people
Yeah.
treated it, So as
Also,
a
who
8-year
like
old,
I say this about the camp. Why do they do these things? Do like the people in charge of camps just love to humiliate children? Because they seem
yeah,
to
I think
regularly do
so.
stuff where it's like, one of you is going to get bullied. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, I don't understand. I know there's people that run camps that are like lovely and nice, but I feel like there are ones where it's like, are there graduate students with clipboards paying attention to what children do? So, like, this, like, they could do stuff that just wrecks kids. I don't
I mean,
understand.
the basic PE classes, right? That wrecks kids.
Mm,
Like, not everybody is meant to do that kind of sports, and
yeah,
it's really embarrassing for kids who can't and
yeah,
or don't want to or are
yeah,
not well enough to, or
yeah,
it's all
yeah. And
growing
I
up
don't
is
understand
painful.
why they're like,
Yeah,
hey, we want to teach kids lifelong fitness. It's like, so let them do whatever active thing they want to do.
right.
And if what they want to do is sit and read a book under a tree, and then maybe they go and run later, like you're not going to make them think that exercise is this horrible thing.
For sure. For a few
Mm-hmm.
years, I was part of raising a child,
Mm-hmm.
my stepchild, and he went to the
Mm-hmm.
school that was very hippie, very open, very
Mm-hmm.
gentle. And
Mm-hmm.
so they just had the kids run around however they wanted to. They had playtime,
Mm-hmm.
and their PE was kind of unstructured. It was
Yeah.
great because he just did whatever he wanted. He's not that sporty, but he would
Mm-hmm.
just play with other kids and it was fine.
Yeah.
Um, he was not like I do CrossFit now and I tried to get him. I was like, "You want to come lift some weights with me?" And he'd be like, "No, never interested." But
Yeah.
he was pretty active at school just because they let him do whatever they wanted.
Yeah. I feel like
Yeah.
it would be so helpful. And it is like, this isn't fair. But also, if school had just let me like move around as I wanted and not given me the idea that like if I was bad at sports, it would be humiliating, I could have joined like, I don't know, a volleyball team or like a softball team and found like various nice people, like nice
Hmm.
queers to date, like years. I probably would have come out like a decade earlier or more if I had just not been so humiliated about sports. If
If
I
you
could just
were
like have
on a
fun.
friendly rugby team or softball
Exactly.
team, that's right.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
I might be, I don't even know, married in a long-term relationship with a huge poly whatever. If they had just let me like read a book in the like underneath a tree. I don't understand why they had to force me, who was very uncoordinated, to like do sports in front of other children.
Right. That's the whole structure of
Yeah.
formal schooling, especially in our generation, was the whole thing was
Yeah.
just humiliating, right?
Yeah. 100%. I think that like I really want to believe that, if you talk to a younger person and they're like, I really want them to be like, there was a time where your teachers actively humiliated you in gym class. They'd be like, weird. That doesn't happen anymore. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice if that's the thing? They're like, you weird old people. Like, that would be
I
beautiful.
think it's happening, little by
Mm-hmm.
little. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
now we are adults and we're out and we are
Mm-hmm.
living queer, tattooed lives.
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans? Do you have plans for more tattoos?
I I have thought a little bit about it, but I feel like tattoos are for me are like falling in love. Like I'll know when it's time.
Hmm.
And I haven't had something where I was like, I've had stuff where I like, oh, I like this thing. And if I could have it for 3 months, cool. but I haven't seen anything where I'm like, I want this to be permanently a way that I show up in the world. Like, I want this to be a way I've modified my body. So we'll get, like, I feel like we'll get there. And honestly, probably other ones are going to be pretty silly, but I just haven't figured it out yet. What about yourself? Do you have another one like planned?
I mean, you can't really see me, but I have a lot. And I've moved away from getting things and into just kind of ornamental things. So,
Nice.
away from characters and faces and humanoid like things. And, it's just plants and then ornaments. So
Awesome.
it's just like continuing body of work.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's less about like a tattoo I want to get, and more like I want to get this arm done. I want to get my neck done. I want to get my hands done. Like it's more about body parts than it is about, like, I feel like I'm inside like a very tattooed person,
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so pretty. I love, what a beautiful way to put that.
Yeah, it's like how people would used to say, like, there's inside of you, there's this kind of person trying to get out, and like inside of me, there's a very tattooed person trying to get out.
That's very fun. I sometimes think of, I can't remember the name of the series, but it's a Japanese like mecha robot something. And there's these big robots and there's like people inside. I think they're all like kids, kind of moving the robot around. And sometimes that's how, like, I, as of now, am a woman. That's how I feel. That's how I feel most comfortable. It's what makes sense for me. But I do wonder sometimes if like the little person inside the robot is going to be like, what if we changed the robot a little bit? What if the robot was a little different?
Yeah.
That might happen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really neat. Like that I might just discover this other thing about myself.
Yeah, like your spirit could be like, let's do something really different. Yeah, let's have a shaved head, or let's get like a big ass
like
facial piercing, or
exactly. Like that's one of the things that I feel like that I love about what is possible now. And I mean this oddly enough about cosmetic surgery as well. And I don't just mean cosmetic surgery so a person can live their truth. I mean, if you want giant titties, go for it. You want like, I don't even want to say like, if you're getting it in a way that it's about someone else, like, I think that might start to hurt you. And so like think about that. But like, if your life is like, you want big boobs or little boobs or big butt or whatever, like you get to make that choice and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like go for it. It's your body.
Yeah. I mean, that's with tattoos too, right? You can get snake skin tattooed on you. You can get, you can do whatever.
Exactly. I love when people have the like robot thing. I would be, one time I was wearing a onesie and I went to use the bathroom and the onesie went on to the ground as it does. And I heard clacking. And because I wasn't fully awake, I was like, oh my God, it's a ghost. And I was terrified. Like I was convinced there was a ghost.
I mean, at night when my dog is breathing or like turning around, I sometimes think there's somebody in the house. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Some folks I know once went to see, I can't remember what her phrase was, but what her job was, but she was like not a ghost hunter, but she got rid of ghosts for people. And
like
I don't know.
Which kind of a
but it was person. Like, that was her like professional. I don't think it was anything to do with like a religion. I think it was like, she would just like, you had an exterminator. She had like a ghost remover. She was like a ghost remover. And I don't know if I believe in ghosts. Some people I know went to this talk that she had done and they were going to go and like make fun of it. Cause like, ha ha ha, ghost lady. She was just really a really interesting person. And one of the things she was saying is that one, sometimes it's a cat. And two, sometimes people, they're like, I want the ghost gone, but they don't. Like they're saying that in the same way where sometimes people are in a bad relationship and they're like, oh, why won't they go? And they just kind of do this. And she's like, people will do that with ghosts and the ghost knows, and you are basically in a relationship with the ghost. So if you don't come to a place where you can let that go, you are keeping the ghost there, which is like the best life advice I've ever heard. In general of like, how many times am I keeping a ghost with me? So I guess I am sort of afraid of ghosts in a different way because everybody's still holding some of them with them, or at least I am. there might be ghosts. I don't know.
What
But
kind of onesie were you wearing?
It was one that I bought secondhand, that was, because it was from one of those stores that are like primarily for children.
Uh-huh.
And I'm mostly over feeling weird about my life decisions because I'm, in my 40s, and a lot of people I know or like grew up with have very different lives, which is fine and great. But sometimes you're in like a Blue Notes and they're with their 10-year-old child, and you're both like, you and the 10-year-old are both buying things at Blue Notes, and it feels weird when you meet at the cash register. So it was
They
like
don't
one
know
of
who
those
you're
things from,
buying
like,
it
Blue
for.
Notes. That is true.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. Not only could I don't even have to say it's for a kid. I could just not say anything. You might have changed my life a little bit. I get to go back to Blue Notes again. This is great.
Well, it's like I've spent so much of my life in like men's department, like buying men's clothes, or when I looked very, very masculine, buying very, very feminine things. And I generally would just be like, they don't know who I'm shopping for. Like, no one cares,
Yeah.
right?
I think that is, and I don't know if this is a message just for me, or like it's a message maybe for like other autistic people or other people with anxiety, that you just don't have to say it.
You don't owe anybody an explanation. Most
Yeah,
people don't know and don't make really that many assumptions. And if they do, like, who cares, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is, wow. Before you were like, what is a moment where everything changed? That might be a moment where everything changed for me, because yeah, I can go back to Blue Notes again.
You
This
can
is
do
great.
whatever you want. Yeah,
Exactly.
buy whatever you want.
Yeah, but it was like velveteen, and it had various animals on it. And I
Okay.
put a patch on it. This is very real thing. I put a little pocket with like a cough candy in case I woke up and was coughing, so I could just reach into the pocket. I don't know. And like, I don't have one in all the time, but it's there for when I'm sick. I could just put a little cough candy in it and just feel extra secure. That was the onesie that I had. So I cut the top off. I still have the top, so I still have the space for my little candy.
When people tell me stories, I like to imagine. And so when you were talking about wearing this onesie and going to the bathroom, I'm trying to imagine you doing that, like in the onesie. And so I feel like one time I asked somebody, they were telling me a story, and I asked, about their sibling, and I was like, did the sibling look like you? And he was like, well, no, not really. And I was like, when people tell you stories, do you imagine the story? And he was like, no. I think that, I asked my partner that recently, and she was like, no. And I was like, oh, this is how different my brain works. Like, I always imagine everything. And so I want to know what people look like, and what the tattoo looks like, and what, what kind of things people are wearing.
Yeah. Well, good news. If you ever want to start a story coaching business in California, you would probably be very, very good at that, because those little details are often, whether it's a pitch for business people or like just wanting to like tell a cute story or tell a story on stage, like specifics will help bring it alive for people, and also how it feels. So I tell clients this all the time. If you can tell me what the emotion is, that's fantastic. Sad, angry, or even, wistful, like whatever, get as specific. But if you can tell me how it feels in your body, the audience will experience it as if it's happening to them, which makes it so much more powerful. And to me, what I've been working on lately, because I'm really trying to figure out how to do this work in a way that is less likely to activate people, because so many of us have trauma, and it really does, in my experience, a lot of times live in the body in a way that people aren't expecting. And so stuff can pop up for people. I think sometimes if people, even in therapy, do a body scan, it can be a thing where, where's that from? And I'm not a therapist, so I want to figure out ways that I can do this work with people in as safe as possible, comfortable environment, because I don't want to be like, we're going to talk about something, like, let's talk about your deepest trauma, and then out you go. Like, I don't have the training, and that's not where my interest lies, of finding the best ways to have people interact with those moments. I want you to talk about stuff your past and already, so you're talking from like a scar, not a wound, but I also don't want to bring up old stuff that might still be there.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can do all those details, or like what someone looks like, because the way someone's face is, it also like, do they have like, is there a warmth to their face? Does their face feel closed? That can tell you a lot of times so much more than like, she was beautiful. I'm so over she was beautiful as a descriptor. Like, in what way?
I know beauty is so vast.
Yeah. And also, what I think is beautiful and what that person thinks is beautiful are two different things. And like, as a person who wants the world to be better, I think it's important for us to realize that not everyone sees the world the same, and not everyone sees beauty the same.
But also not to make that be this really important thing, right? Because it's already such a disparity in the world. Like beauty disparity creates a lot of issues and a lot of suffering. So can we move away from that being a descriptor that's important, right?
100%. But also, honestly, on a practical note, if you describe someone as beautiful and you give very like, she was beautiful with like blonde hair and big boobs and blue eyes, like the what I've heard. Sorry, cis straight men, not sorry, cis straight men, but like the amount of times I've heard that as a descriptor, I'm like, you're boring me. But anyways, if you just say beautiful and that's the cultural message I've gotten, and then someone describes something else, I have to refigure that person in my mind as a listener, and I might be missing the next thing you're saying. Like, tell me about that. Even if you haven't, like, if you give me some descriptors, like I really like my nose. When I was a little kid, I wanted like a teeny little nose. That's one of the things I wanted, because some shitty kid said something mean. It is one of the features in my face that I really like. And so if someone described me as having like a beautiful nose, I'd be like so excited. But like, if you give me some detail about them that is not what I'm expecting, that's the thing I'm focused on. And I don't have to have the rest of how they look exact, because I have something to pinpoint.
Yeah, I agree. My brain does that too.
Yeah. And also, it's less boring. And so much of the world is boring. Like, just saying the same thing as everyone else, like, yawn. No, thank you.
Well, that's why we live in a different world. You
know?
Recognize that the rest of the world is boring. You create a world for yourself that isn't.
100%. And which brings us back to storytelling and tattoos, two ways that I have managed in my life to like design the life that I wanted. It's pretty rad.
Yes. A friend of mine asked me yesterday, I said, like, this year is about expansion. She said, oh, do you want to open another shop? And I was like, no, I mean, the podcast is an expansion of my work. And she was kind of like, okay. And I was like, well, like, sure, it's not bringing me any money and maybe won't ever. But the thing is, what I do is about storytelling, and so is the podcast. Like, that's really what tattooing is about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Telling the stories of the clients and creating a new story together and continuing on their story. And
also, do you ever get, because I feel like this might be a common thing between us, where someone who seems to be really doing well financially will take you aside and be like, I'm very unhappy. So like, you seem like you figured out this like cool life. And I'm like, okay, like, I live with a roommate. I choose to live with a roommate, but like living by myself made me too sad. So being someone in your 40s with a roommate, people will go like, but I'm happy.
Yeah, that's what you choose.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's for sure true that, you'll see people in long-term marriages who are really unhappy, or people with kids who didn't want kids. And, they've kind of made peace with having those kids, but they didn't actually really want kids. And you see it all the time, right? People who have these ideal looking lives that aren't actually ideal for them.
Yeah. And like, if you expand inside, like, you don't have to, it doesn't, there's time, it costs, because there's time, and there's like, it hurts to change. It sucks. Like, it's great, but it's painful to like change yourself. But you don't have to find a space for more stuff if what you're doing is in here. Like, it's amazing the amount, like, I'm trying to rid myself of a bunch of things that I have
Yeah, me
that
too.
made sense. Yeah, that made sense in the past, but I've been still carrying them around. I was like, I could just like, there's someone else here who could want or need this stuff. Why am I not putting it out there? But it's a lot of times I'm just like, but like, what if I need it later? But if I'm focusing on the inside, I won't need it later.
Well,
Like
if you
it's
need
here.
it later, you'll just buy it again,
True.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things that I've given away, things that were valuable, things that were expensive,
Mhm.
things that, maybe aren't as simple to just buy again. But it's like you haven't used it in years and this person can
Yeah,
really use it. So
exactly. I live in this apartment. I've lived for 10 years in the same apartment, and I live on a pretty busy street in Toronto. Like it's west end of Toronto. So it's like going to be affordable for me for like one more year. And then I don't know where I'll go because like everything's gentrifying.
mhm.
Says the person who is one of the gentrifiers, like
Like a
it
different
used to
level of
be.
it. You were like originally
Exactly.
gentrifying, but now you're being gentrified.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I feel like I really hope that various Portuguese people in my neighborhood are like, see how it feels.
Mm,
Like this is how we felt 10, 15 years ago. But anyways,
mm.
I feel like in Canada we pretend like we're like, no, we're more left wing. And then often the politicians are saying the same thing, but we just go like a halfway through. Like it's just there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, huh, I really hope that we are able to be better and allow poor people to live. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right. We're just jealous because you have medicine.
That is, I don't understand. Like, obviously, you get this, and I think a lot of Americans do. But if you're the best country in the world, like, why not take care of your people
I
so
know,
they can
right?
continue to excel?
Because people have to be responsible for themselves. We're a country responsible for ourselves, citizens, and we're
Yeah.
individuals.
But also,
That's
like,
why.
couldn't everyone, and once again, saying this to someone who actively agrees with me, but couldn't people take care of themselves individually better if they were healthy
Yeah.
and
No,
not
I mean,
worried constantly about paying medical debt?
well, I think that's the big difference with why it's not happening, right? It's also same with capitalism. It's we're
Mm-hmm.
focused on the individual versus the collective.
Yeah.
And we're saying everybody has the same opportunities and people don't have the same opportunities. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody is capable, has the capacity, has the
Yeah.
privilege to reach certain places in
Yeah.
life. And so that's
Yeah.
the issue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, it amazes me how often Canadian politicians will like say something like, we're taking away various rights of yours, and then while still patting themselves on the back for like not being America. I love a lot of things about Canada. Our history's got a lot of true horrors, some wonderful things. But it's weird to be in a country that in many ways is just like America, but like doesn't dress as cool. Like we don't have your movie industry, and our food trends are behind you. And but we have healthcare. Like it's a
I would
very
take the
strange place.
healthcare
Yes.
over the movies.
It's healthcare is pretty great.
I do have to say though that the movies have gotten better, like
Mm-hmm.
COVID, and sort of like there's a way in which the movies that I used to watch in early 2000s that were super indie and super culty and weird
Mm-hmm.
are now like everything everywhere all at once. Did you see
Yeah.
that?
I
Like
loved that. I never
it's
expected a
so
movie with two
good.
rocks. Yeah, two rocks to make me cry. And I'm sorry if people haven't seen
The
it.
rocks were good. I know the rocks
The
were good.
rocks were so great.
But just like the whole movie, it's so weird and it got so
Mhm.
many accolades and that just wouldn't have happened like 20 years ago. So I'm happy about that.
100%. And
Yeah.
also, I just feel like movies are kinder now.
Yeah. They
Like
are.
I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, 1999, I love the movies. A lot of those indie movies were like kind of mean to women,
There
especially.
was a lot of trauma, like trauma
Yeah.
porn, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also just I loved Fight Club. I recently rewatched Fight Club and I was like, oh, this movie is very gay. And I had no idea. Like,
Mm.
this is a very gay movie that I did not see that. Like, it's not even subtext, it's text. Like, that is
Huh.
a very gay
I
movie.
need to watch that again.
I don't know if I would know if I didn't know that Chuck Palahniuk, that's I think how you say his name, is an openly gay man who's been with a man for like over a
I had
decade.
no idea. I read a lot of his
Mhm.
books a while back. Like it's been a
Yeah.
while, but okay, interesting. He definitely
Yeah.
worked some things out in his books.
Yeah.
Erin,
hmm
we need to wrap it up.
We do. I could talk to
We
you all
need to
day.
wrap it
This has
up. I
been so
know.
lovely.
That's right. Me too.
Yeah.
So for kind of an ender, I have a couple of
hmm
questions for you. So one is, do you have a project that you want to advertise for the people to know about, your
hmm
storytelling classes or coaching? Where can people find you and what can you help them with?
Oh, fantastic. So, probably the best way to find me, let me make sure I'm telling you the right thing. The website that has kind of information about me and like some of my projects and stuff is storystarcoaching.com. And I'm actually gonna, if you're comfortable with it, I'm gonna give you a page with all my stuff on it, so it's easy for people. Because
Yeah,
I know for me, trying to write stuff down when someone is saying it is like, ugh. So there's Story Star Coaching, which
I'll have
is
that link in the
oh,
notes. Yeah.
fantastic. And to book me for my more kind of like if you work at a company, hopefully, first of all, if you work at a company, I hope they're paying you a lot of money because you deserve it. But if you would like to do an online course, or if you have a company that would like to do some storytelling work, the best way to get in touch with me is storystar.company.site. That's where the person I work with who helps me with that side of things, you can get in touch with her through there. And I am on Instagram at Erin_Rogers_story pro. That's where I post a bunch of different stuff. Also, I am on Twitter. I once had a tweet go viral, so that might happen at some point again. And if so, you can say you knew me when.
We in the States no longer use Twitter.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
right.
done
It's
we're done with
terrible.
Twitter in the States. So
Yes, you're right. That is terrible. I
yeah,
should
it's
also
pretty
get off Twitter.
terrible. But
Yeah.
people will find you on Instagram. I will follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you, this is a very like, it feels very weird to have like an extra level of like, with this. Because the reason that it's bad is because Elon Musk is terrible. He's a terrible
Yes.
man who does terrible things and says terrible things and whatever. The other part of it for me personally is I'm a big fan of Grimes' music. She is like a big Canadian success story. And like, other than the fact that I'm pretty sure pronoun is still she. Let's say they, because I feel like they were talking about using they for a while. I find them very hot. Not anymore.
Who is this person? Do I know them?
Grimes was married to Elon Musk.
Oh,
And as soon as that happened,
oh,
like I was like,
got it.
yeah. But
Okay.
like let's say the year before that, I was like, what a talented, interesting, hot
Oh,
person.
cool.
And
Yeah.
Elon Musk took that away from me.
Oh, you can still like the ex-partner, ex-wife, whatever that
Yeah,
person
well, they've
identifies as.
also done and said some stuff that's been real
Have
fucked.
they?
So
Okay. I didn't
yeah,
know. I'll look it up.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
That
Thanks
ended
for
on a weird
that.
note, but
Well,
if
the
yes.
last thing is what I
Mhm.
ask all my guests is give me a one or two small things that have been making you happy lately.
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I love that. Uh, well, one of them is episodes of Columbo. I love that. It's that detective show. I was talking about that earlier from the 70s. It has the detective is played by the amazing Peter Falk, who's one of my favorite actors. I, in fact, hired a friend of mine who does a great Peter Falk impression to record like evening like kind of aphorisms or that kind of thing that for me to listen to because I find Peter Falk's voice so soothing that
Mhm.
like he says like you tried your best today. Anyways, so Columbo makes me so happy.
I love that.
Thank you. It is truly the best thing I have ever bought. Maybe my tattoos are the best thing I ever bought, but like I got to support a friend, I got to enjoy almost Peter Falk, and I just like I feel so much better because of it. Anyways, so Columbo and seeing my friends succeed. That's been wonderful. My friends have been doing some really incredible things lately. And I okay, I'm gonna cheat and say one more one because this last one is included with my friends. On April the 4th, the second anthology of stories from various people comes out. We're putting it out like it's an ebook and physical book. It's from Amazon. I'm sorry, folks. We're trying to get better at that. But the money goes to Water Charity, which is a charity that provides water to people who need it. Created by three people that have never met in person, that met during COVID and became really close friends because of the storytelling community. And then we're putting out this second edition. There's a lot of really beautiful stories in it. I don't like to use the word powerful because people use that to sell deodorant, but I really think there's some powerful stories. I love every story. There are two queer love stories that are beautiful and without trauma. And that alone makes me prouder than almost anything I've ever accomplished.
It's a good selling point. It's just the love, not the rest of it. Yeah,
exactly. So I've honestly, I've never been prouder of a project.
I'm so happy to hear it.
Thank
Erin,
you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for seeking me out and responding to my post.
Wonderful. This has been such a pleasure.
Spending time chatting. It was such a pleasure. And if I'm ever in Toronto, I'll look you up.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. And if you're here in the Bay Area, let me know. I'll follow you on social media.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.